Hi everyone, this is Yan Cano, and our topic this week will be about the Philippine Constitution, broken into several videos. The Philippine Constitution is one of the mandated topics in the course Readings in Philippine History, and this video will be short and will cover several concepts like what is a democracy, what is a republic, what do checks and balances mean, and how does it look like to have a government where there is separation of powers. Let's start with the most basic principle. In the 1987 Constitution, Article 2, Section 1, it lays out what type of state the Philippines is. So we are a democratic and republican state. Now, when we talk about democracy, it is a government by the people, a form of government in which the supreme power is vested in the people. So demos rule by many. This is different from a monarchy and an aristocracy. A monarchy is a type of government which is ruled by one, either a king or a queen, while the aristocracy is ruled by a few people, like the aristocrats, the elite, the nobility. So a democracy is achieved by conducting free elections in which eligible people vote. So, like for example, there are two types of democracy. You have the direct democracy and the representative democracy. So, when we have a direct democracy, the people decide on matters or issues without a representative or without proxies. While on the other hand, a representative democracy, there is an issue, there's a need to make laws, and it is the elected representative who represents or decides in behalf of the people who chose him or her or who elected him or her. Now remember that sovereignty resides in the people and all government authority emanates from you, from me, from us. All government authority emanates from the people. Now, again, I repeat, when we talk about a republic, it is a state in which the supreme power emanates from the people. And there are elected representatives who forward, who represent our interests. So remember that the Philippines is a republic with a presidential form of government, and power is equally divided among its three branches: executive, the legislative, and the judiciary. So, in a nutshell, a republic is where the power of government is held by the people. The people give power to leaders who elect to represent them and serve their interests. So, always remember that it's always imperative that we choose good leaders, leaders who will forward and who will advance our own interests instead of their families, their companies, their friends, and who will serve the people. And last, the representatives are responsible for helping all the people in the country, not just a few people. So always remember that there needs to have to be representatives you who will advance your interest, who will protect your interest and not the interests of a select few. So here, when we talk about representative government, the people elect individuals to make governmental decisions for all of the citizens. Now, how does it look like when power is equally divided among the three branches of government? So here you can see that you have three: the legislative, the executive, and the judiciary. So on when we talk about the legislative, we have the Congress. Congress is composed of two houses or chambers. That's why we call it bicameral. In the upper house, we have the senators, 24 of them, and with the Congress, you have House of Representatives. So the legislative branch is tasked to make laws, and the executive branch belongs the power to enforce the laws, and to the judicial branch or the judiciary belongs the power to interpret laws. Now, the legislative branch is not only responsible for creating or enacting the laws of the state, but it also appropriates the money necessary to operate the government. So, in our next video, we'll be talking about the power of the purse and where it resides. The executive branch is responsible for implementing and administering the public policy enacted and funded by the legislative branch. And the judiciary is responsible for interpreting the Constitution and the laws and applying their interpretations to the controversies brought before it. So, when we have a separation of powers, as I mentioned earlier, all branches are co equal. So the legislature or the legislative has no authority to execute or interpret the law, but its role is to make laws. On the other hand, the executive, its role is to just enforce. Again, I'm repeating what I said to emphasize. And for the judiciary, it has no power to make or execute the law, but it interprets the law. Now, once there is a branch that encroaches or interferes with one branch or with the domain of another branch, there is what you call a violation of the separation of powers principle. So, by separating the powers of government, no one branch would have enough power to dominate the others. So, under the principle of separation of powers, there is also a checks and balances mechanism. So, this means that one branch can restrain or balance the actions of the other. And we can see that in the recent events of the South Korean martial law. So, when the president declared martial law, their legislative branch checked or made the president accountable for his actions because it was not legal, it was not constitutional. So you can see the checks and balances at work in the South Korean example of just this week or last week, sorry. So take note that the principle of limited government rests on the concept of popular sovereignty. Again, it is the people who form the government and the powers they decide on the powers that the government can exercise. So, if the government exercises powers beyond those granted to it by the Constitution, it is said to be acting illegally. So, again, when we talk about the principle of limited government, just remember that the government can only do what the people allow it to do. So it's very important that we as citizens know what our power is, or else we will be giving it away by the lack of knowledge. So here I have an example from current events. And so here this is a check by the judiciary on the executive through a temporary restraining order or a TRO on the transfer of PhilHealth's excess funds to the National Treasury. So there were three petitioners. These were all citizens. So people also have that choice, have that privilege. So there were three petitions, and these three petitions challenged the return of excess reserve funds of GOCCs or government owned and controlled corporations to the National Treasury to fund unprogrammed appropriations. So here they filed a petition versus President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. So why was it filed? Because starting on early this year, there some tranches of the funds were transferred to the national treasury. So first, it was 20 billion was transferred to the national treasury on May 10, and another 10 billion tranche was transferred on August 21. The third tranche at 30 billion pesos was transferred in October. And so the the 29.9 billion were the remaining funds that were now under TRO. So these were supposed to be transferred in November, but because of the TRO, this was stopped. So this is an example of how the judiciary can put a check on the executive branch. Now, let's go to. I'd like to remind you of a certain quote by Patrick Henry that the Constitution is an instrument for the people to restrain the government, lest it come to dominate our lives and interests. So it's really important that we know what our Constitution states, what are the duties of an elected official, what are the branches of government and the roles, the responsibilities, as well as what are the roles and responsibilities of a citizen and who is a citizen. And we'll be talking about that in the weeks to come about citizenship. And we now see that it was something that was a hot topic because of the Alice Go issue. So again, I started with this and I end with this. So please remember that sovereignty resides in the people and all government authority emanates from you, from me, from us. All government authority emanates from the people. And this is an important and a very basic principle to know and to understand. Thank you very much for watching and listening to this video. This is Yan Kano. Have a good day.